Thanks for joining us for part 2 of In Conversation with Colette Eloy and Latanya D. Tigner. Listen in as we continue our discussion of focused training for culture-specific dance and those bringing their knowledge to the Back to the Root Symposium and Series.
There are folk across the country who are like doing amazing research and amazing writing and are like, you know, putting the Africana perspective out there in the world in some very fabulous ways. And so I am thankful. And then, you know, we have our folk right here who like are keeping it on the real, who have been visiting regulars and back to Miss Tracy Barlow comes in and holds it down. Miss Deborah Vaughn, and then Anissa Rashid, who's a former company member of Dimensions, has been visited throughout. But it is, I personally have not experienced something like this before in terms of like how we're doing it. Now, it may be, I personally have not experienced it. Like to go deep on one aspect that is so, to me, is very prominent in Africana dance, right? The spine and the pelvis is kind of that isolation and that focus in so many of our forms. Why is that? Why have we held on to it? And to focus on that and then go throughout the geographies and the diasporas and the cultures that they've come from and have retained them and look at those specifics within that geographic region, you know, or that culture and what was held and what was understood about it and how we're carrying it forward and how we're talking about it, and to dispel all of the negative, often negative adjectives associated with how we move, particularly African, particularly Black women, over sexualization of our bodies, the hypersexualization. But also we do talk about what Thomas says is the genocide of the male hip. I think that is the term that he used, you know, because men move their hips, the male body, you know, move their, and very, very profound ways, and are as articulate and technical and virtuose in that articulation, sometimes even more than more than the female. So it is important to know that neither is to be devalued.
Yes.
Neither is to be devalued. So it's a purpose, and we talk about all those different purposes and why we do these things based on the dance form that we're in. And so, and to have scholars from those regions, have it being taught, and again, the pandemic lend itself to have the people in the locations, the origin spaces of those dances coming in and teaching and talking. So personally, I have not experienced something that's last a whole year, like and hitting the boom, 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 bam, and in being engaged in this way. So I'm thankful. In a year, I've learned more than a whole bunch of years collective, you know, just, and that's not to to disregard what I've learned from the teachers. It's just in one space, you know, you often have to go to these different spaces to get the information, but are like housed in one space. So.
It's likewise. It has been such a treat and a blessing to do this over this year while in the program, and just having those two forms of education meet together just has been really a blessing. And one of the things that we talked about that I love so much is the cosmogram, the Congo cosmogram, and the spiral of it, the circle of it, and the spiraling hip, and the way the womb is seen as earth, and how it's connected to these theology schools that women are accepted into once they menstruate, and like just like unearthing all of this information. And these schools are like pre-colonial, and they had these whole ways of seeing how to live in the world that is just chock full of wisdom and knowledge on everything from like processes of ancesterization, not just you dying you're an ancestor, but did you do stuff admirable how to be lifted to that place. And it's just
Ooh, so you have to earn your title ancestor.
yes, just because you lived and you died does not make you an ancestor. No. But we're hoping that people remember the souls of these people who passed, that we are here now to live in a more free, not shackled, working day in, day out. Yes, it has shifted. And this is what Juneteenth is about. And to be able to honor your ancestries, to be able to honor and remember your important people. That's what ancestrization is about.
It's a process you're not born in.
It's a process. You're not born, and you have to make that. You have to prove that. You got to do something worthwhile with your life. And what I've learned from these traditional dances too, is like, are you representing for your family? Are you representing for your own ori, for your highest self? Do you know your highest self? Are you in touch with it? How are you moving through life in that way? You know, like if we're talking about Orishas and Orisha dance, what I love about it so much is it's not just about kings and queens. Sometimes we get carried away with kings and queens. All kings and queens were not nice. Not in Africa, not in Europe. Some of them are narcissists. But some of these Orishas, they got venerated because they did something terrible, and it was how they rebound from that. I learned that from these dances. I love that about these dances, you know. Yeah, and sometimes in that rebound, in that how you fix a thing, how you did something selfless, how you did something self-full. Sometimes you gotta really, Black folks, we gotta consider ourselves, you know, so that we can lift up our children. Yeah, it's really a mind shift. These dances, like Latanya mentioned, they cleanse you. They cleanse you. A friend of mine calls it, it's like you get into your own sacred sweat when you dance.
Ooh, a sacred sweat.
Sacred sweat.
Sacred sweats. Yes.
I can feel that. I can feel that.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
That's interesting that you said that, because this has been in past conversation that I've heard, is that some people regard some of the ethnic cultural traditions of dance and song together as sacred, and not necessarily wanting to put that in a larger platform, whether that's academia or whether that's on larger performance platforms. What are you all's thoughts on that? Of crossing the sacred and the performative?
But Tanya be dropping knowledge on about that.
I think to a degree, I personally feel that all dance is sacred. It's just how and where you place it, because I think all dance, it's a tool of communication, and it can elevate you depending upon like what the vibration is in the moment. But you know, also as my role as the co-artistic director of the Ethnic Dance Festival, that comes up, you know, in terms of like, is this something that is to be out into the world, you know, or is this something that, you know, is reserved? And we leave that to the artists that come to us. Like, if it's sacred, how is it to be presented? You know, and and my thing is like, maybe certain elements don't get shown. Maybe certain elements, because there's a lot of stuff out there that, from my information, it's a lot of dances that we shouldn't be doing anyway because we're not initiated into them. Like on the real, you know, but they're being taught, you know, they're being taught out in the world. And is, you know, it's like, ooh. Now, you know, I'm finding out like, oh, baby, yeah. I committed a faux pas, but not knowing because somebody is teaching it, right? And so I'm assuming, and that's that thing about, do you have permission to teach certain dances? Are you initiated to do so if you what is that process? But a lot of that information, I don't feel like we necessarily get, it's not put out there. But in terms of like sacred dances, and how they get presented, my hope is that the people who are keepers of that culture are doing right by it and not doing presenting things that should not be public, like things that are solely sacred. And I know there are some dances that are, again, that are presented not in full, like parts of it can be done, presented in a way. And then there are secular dances that, are open, they're celebratory and they're communal, and people feel fine about, presenting those. But my hope is that people who are responsible for those dances are presenting them in a way that's respectful, and do not breach a code of what, because everybody ain't supposed to see everything, and I'm fine with that. If you tell me I can't present that, I'm cool, because I'm like, do what you need to do. That is of the utmost respect to the culture.
In my trips, ethnography, however you want to call it, there's times when I've been in spaces they were like, we don't even let women into this space, but we're going to let you into this space. I think sometimes it's your ancestors putting you in a place to do a thing. And then I went with a friend, and she came along with me. She was not the one they told to come. And then she wanted to start breaking it up and saying, why can't women be here? And this is a sister, and she's coming from like here in the US. That's a solid point. But if you're walking into another culture, you don't know their whole dynamics of male and female. There might be other situations where it's female dominant, especially in Africa, where there's all kinds of combinations and changes in how genders perform. So I would say that's also this kind of, you have to be careful in that kind of work to go and travel. And then we too, myself included, we come from this like commodification culture where, oh, I paid for this, I get to have it. Like, no, this is not about that. These are sacred dances, and sometimes if it's coming to you, you have to give it a respect that's outside of your purview of, oh, I own this, I get to do this, or and there's that kind of a stewardship, I think, when you want to go deep. And then I also want to talk about sacred and secular in terms of sometimes that secular turns sacred.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Sometimes that house music is hit, or whatever, that second line hits, or whatever hits in a way where this is like, oh, this spirit just came into the room. It kind of shifts perceptions and ideas, kind of extends discourses.
Yeah.
Topic.
Yeah. And to me, like things like second line is first and foremost sacred because it comes out of a funeral rite tradition. The act of music accompanying and the singing accompanying someone to be laid to rest. And then you have that musical aspect, and then you have the dancing along with that. So it comes and it crosses over into secular when the procession is separated from the burial rite, but it's still in that same function. So you're still celebrating community. So to me, it's always sacred. That's why I said the sacred and the secular is never, it's hard to discern. Because the same with like in a party element at a function, like when it turns over, and that moment when it turns over, you're like, wait a minute, something just clicked, And then everybody is wrapped up. It's like it's building to that sacred space, but I always think it's already sacred. You're
Mm-hmm.
already walking into a sacred space as a secular space with a,
Mm-hmm.
with a secular mindset, and then the sacred just take over. Spirit, reasserts itself, and then it's like I never left. I don't, and then
There goes the cosmology right there. Spirit never leaves.
it just takes the right combination of things to turn it over into like, to click it over to everybody gets swept up. It'll be some people, you notice a shift in their body. They're moving a little different, um
Mm-hmm.
you seem like, uh-oh, it's in church, it's at the club, it's at it happens. So spirit,
I've seen it.
you know
It
so
happened on the proscenium stage. You
right,
see it happen on the proscenium
yeah,
stage.
see people go, you'd be like, oh, that one gone, that one.
Yeah, right. You do 3 nights of a thing, but something happened on sometimes that third night, second night, sometimes you like, oh, that was
Yep,
not part of the choreography.
yep,
But
right,
that was the best
exactly.
day.
And you'd be like, I don't know. And you hear a lot of people talk about, I don't know what I did because spirit took over, and
Mm-hmm.
you got rolled that night. So spirit, yeah, it's just, and then, it's just so it's hard for me to, and when I was younger, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand that, and it wasn't until I got introduced to all of the different Orisha, and when you hear somebody playing the drum, and then it's just like boom, and then you're like, wait a minute, I don't know what just happened to me. And it's the same with the DJ. DJ has control of the situation, and can click it over, and yeah, I love us.
The black body is made for love. I know I'm getting a little
Mm.
bit here, but like those little pillowy lip kisses are like, all that, the beautiful squeezes are the way you can lay your head on your grandmama chest, on her bosom. Like we made for love. We're like, but that's not something someone says when they're talking about the black dancing body. It gets reduced. That's why I do like God's Child's book, The Black Dancing Body, because she releases that black dancing body like, hey, black, this is a construct. And the white body is a construct. You
Hmm.
know, they try to reduce people to colors. We are not colors. We are whole human beings,
Right.
whole places with whole, very individual identities. And anytime you try to put everybody into these big categories, it's only set up so you can put them in a stratification and you can say this one is more important than that one, this one. So like back to that question about how we're shifting educational system. That's this back to the root is our step in doing that kind of work in the field of dance and dance studies.
Yeah. And, speaking of being made for love, how do you ground yourself? Like during this pandemic and like prior and beyond, what are your practices for grounding self?
Hmm.
After you've done your dance and spun yourself into a spiritual tizzy.
Child, I go somewhere and sit down. Sometimes it takes a moment to come down. Like, it's just like,
Yes.
you have to come down and recollect, and just reflect, and be thankful that you were able to reach that elevation, reach that, like, somebody, our ancestors said, okay, it's your turn today, and just reflect and be thankful, and to be thankful that I've been able to be in the spaces with these phenomenal teachers over the years, and being these practitioners, artists, performers, and people to just sit and listen to, be able to see and recognize, and then make the connections, because that's what it is for me. It's like, I'll share this real quick and then I'll be quiet. When Too Short and E40 did that verses, I don't know if y'all saw that, but it was like, oh my God. I was in my house acting a buck fool, and I danced for 2.5 hours straight because they were not only, but they came together on some brotherhood. Like, this is the Bay Area. First of all, it's not gonna be a battle like that. And they came with straight up culture. Like, they had the cars on set. They had the vocabulary that there was, the Bay Area vocabulary. Too Short was giving geography lessons about the Bay.
Wow.
It was a whole thing. Like, you could take that verses and create a curriculum off of. I promise you. And then the music, throughout the areas, and the work that they've done, and just, it was a whole history, a whole cultural lesson about the Bay Area, Vallejo, Oakland, all the different spaces in between, Richmond, just like but it took me back to when I was in the club. It took me back, because I was like, oh my God. But being in these Africana dance spaces, I was now girded with something else. Like, I understood what was happening in the club spiritually, that, I could tap into from these other learning spaces that I had been in over the years, and I was in my house acting up. Just, and and after 2.5 hours, I sat down and I was like, whoa, what just happened? Because at the time, I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know I had been moving that long. But that was the kind of
music
space
space
that you can access from all these different ways. And it's like, it's all the same. It's the same no matter if it's E40 and Too Short, throwing it down, or if it's, in a Delmonico class, or Usaini's class, or Yusuf's class, or Alcini's class, Yeah, it was a lot brought into that moment. That was historical. It was cultural. But it also tapped into our African selves in that moment, just in a very profound way. How the language, and they talked about food. It was just so much. And I forgot the topic, but there you go. I forgot where I was going with that, but
she said, how do you come down? How do you relax?
Yeah, and so in that moment, when I came down, I just immediately started reflecting and thanking those close to me. My father was come to mind, my mother, because she was the educator, right? And then just, I began to reflect as I'm coming down. And then being thankful to have had the experience. And then,
reflection practices.
Yeah.
How about for you, Colette? Like, what are some things that ground you, whether it's post-performance or just in your general practice?
I'm a prayer. And people would never think that about me, but I'm like, I'm talking to you, I'm praying. I'm walking down the street, I'm praying. And I like to stay real close to my ancestors. And that's what keeps me grounded. When I start to go off in some other direction, they just remind me, look at how everything is fine. You know what I mean? I could be in the middle of a tornado, and that's that God Almighty. That's my grandmother, Jedon Wazo, and the way that she pray and sing and bring God right into the room with you, and like that. And then so when I found that in the dances, I said, oh, I see, and so I like to keep that really close to me all the time, and that's what grounds me.
Yeah. I love that. Like the dances are prayer, no matter what they are. Like you're always connecting to your higher self in our dances.
Mm-hmm.
It's never, I don't think it's ever it's performative.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like Miss Colette
Mm-hmm.
said, at any moment somebody can click over. Any moment it could be in a like a hip hop situation, house, jit, whatever it is. And you know it when you see it, when that happens, when
And
somebody.
for those people who might hear this and think, because I've seen people want to teach like any kind of like hip hop or something and say, oh, you just freestyle, you just do what you want. We're not saying all this to say this kind of like just swing your arms and go. No, that's not what we're talking about. These are techniques, very clear and specific. Like Agbaja, Yambalu, Zinli, Wolosodon, Manjani, uh, the different ones, Mutwashi, all of them. These are particular techniques that are refined. We're not saying that there's not the technique to it, but we're something about that technique is a key. Those techniques are keys to ancestors, are like something, something. There is a in that sacred secular again. Maybe that secular has something to do with the techniques of these things, the songs.
Yeah.
Something about that song, that Haitian dance, that Haitian rhythm come together.
Yeah, it's all of it. It's all of it. It's the dance.
Above, I remember first time I walked into Blanche Brown class, and she had like 11 drummers, and people were singing, and you going across the dance, dancing and singing. Now that's a whole nother thing. You going across the floor, dancing and singing. Then you hear above you, it's like a different chorus of harmonics that are hitting, and these vibrational harmonics are like coming down your spine, and like you just feel so lifted.
Yeah.
You know.
It's all those things together in all the spaces. It's the voice, the singing, it's the rhythm, right? And it's the movement, all that in concert, in call and response, in concert, in that antiphony, in that the creation of the body responding with layering rhythms on rhythms and responding to the drum calling you, all of that. And we always have a drum. There's always a drum present, no matter where. Even like Thomas talks about revitalizing the ghost in terms of like recorded music, right? So DJs revitalize the ghost because they mix it up and they play with it. So they create a new something that happens in that party, in that function, that then accelerates, activates a vibration in a way. We always have the drum, we always have the body, we always have the voice.
Wow. One key takeaway that I'm hearing is that every technique has the key to unlock and activate motions and rhythms and feelings inside of you to take you to a higher level that is beyond just the movement that's happening in that moment.
Yep.
It takes you to a higher plane that goes beyond the physical.
Yep. And a lot of, when you think of like a technique as a means to an end of performance and execution, no, if you're in the right technique, like you just said, it enables you to reach that next level and keep you well in the process.
So if you ladies will, wrap us up by giving us some last words, telling us what's next, what's coming up.
The final culminating back to the root. So that will be trying to bring as many of these folk back together to do back-to-back classes, so you can embody all of those things, not just one and then wait a month and do the next, just like back-to-back to have that.
Thanks so much for joining us for this audio experience. For additional content that reflects our dynamic dance community, Visit our In Dance article archive at dancersgroup.org.